Well, welcome to today's edition of Pastor on Pop. Today we are talking about Marvel's multiverse saga, new phase 5 and 6 that I am so excited about, and a big announcement for the podcast. Welcome to Pastors on Pop. Hey, James, good to see you.
Matt, good to see you, buddy.
We are talking Marvel today. I'm a big fan of Marvel. Are you? We'll take that as a no. Thanks for joining in on the conversation today.
You saved me there.
So I love the Marvel movies, and I went and saw both of the Hulk movies in the theater. And the first Hulk with Eric Bana, this is the movement of Marvel in my life, and then it tanked. Then they got Edward Norton and he did it, and then Iron Man came out, and the rest is history. And for 12 years of my life, if a Marvel movie was in the theater, I saw it and I loved it. Were you on staff when we all went and saw Endgame together?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. So I'm such a big Marvel fan. I made all of the guys on staff go.
Yeah, exactly. Even Pastor Chris, and you I think explain the whole Marvel universe using fly fishing language.
I did, yes.
Yes, and it was actually fantastic.
Yes, to help Pastor Chris, as he had missed a lot of... Well, Pastor Chris is notorious for going to movies and falling asleep. And so he had fallen asleep. I don't know how you fall asleep in Marvel movies. They're so loud. But anyways, so I had to fill it in using fly fishing. And that's it, yeah. So that's where we're at. So the big announcement this last week was Marvel is launching their Phase 5 and Phase 6, which I am so happy about because you and I actually talked about this, how Phase 4 has been a disaster.
Oh, yeah. Well, and it related so much to the TV show Lost for me, right? Where you keep watching, you're just okay, get back on track. And it's nope.
That one didn't do it.
But each installment, you get more concerned about the storyline. And we had a great conversation about Disney and them losing the ability to storytell, and then they kind of threw this out there oh, it was the plan all along.
Yes, yeah, right. That's exactly what it felt like. Yeah, 2 weeks ago when we were having this conversation, you asked me about something, maybe a movie that was coming out. Oh, you asked me about Thor, Love and Thunder, if I had seen it, and I told you that I had, and I was mixed on it. And how really Phase 4 for me, they had lost any, they have taught us Marvel fans to watch movies in a serial way, like a TV show, and that each movie is going to tell the story that the next movie is going to pick up and add to, and eventually we're getting to this huge end game, and with the first 3 phases, it was Thanos is where all this was heading, the big bad. And then we entered into Phase 4, and it was after Spider-Man, it was completely lost. Loki, I thought was a good show. I really enjoyed Hawkeye, but there was no connection. And from the very beginning, when I heard that they were coming out with the multiverse, I was it's over. I'm going to refuse to be a Marvel fan because multiverses make everything worse.
Yeah.
It's cheating storytelling.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know what the right word is.
You can do anything now, and you can rewind.
That's right. We didn't like that decision. Let's bring back Robert Downey. His death didn't mean anything, right? So anyways, I've just been really perturbed. And so there's a young guy here who's in high school. His name's Matthew Dunn. Yeah. And Matthew Dunn and I, once a week, we have our Marvel discussions, and we put on our our tinfoil hats, and where's Marvel going? What are they doing? And we just It's like we're a bunch of old men at McDonald's trying to solve the world's problems, only we're trying to solve Marvel's problems. So on Sunday, he ran up to me and he's like, "Did you see the announcement? Did you see the announcement?" And he had it all on his phone, all of the titles that were coming out, and how Kane the Conqueror was going to be the big bad, and that everything was now leading to this. And then he gave me this whole big explanation of Phase 4. And what they said about Phase 4, and I was so they figured out it wasn't working, and they hit the abort button. Good for them. Yeah. Good course correction here. Yeah. Let's get back on. So Phase 4 ends with Black Panther and Wakanda Forever, and Phase 5, I guess technically movie-wise, begins with Ant-Man and the Wasp and the Quantum Mania that is that. So,
which is an interesting start because he's not the most attractive character.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's more of a sub character, like in my estimation.
Yeah, yeah. They don't have any of the big ones left. I guess.
Yeah, I guess that's true. You gotta start little.
You gotta go with gotta start very little with Ant-Man. Yes, that's true. That's true. So they'll launch that, and ultimately they're getting to into Phase 6, so the next 3 years, 4-ish years, will be movies all connected, hopefully.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
life will be better.
And storytelling is tough, right? I mean, like we've talked a lot about that with The Mandalorian, and like you take these proven moneymakers and great stories, and you do a spin-off, and how do you weave in enough of the DNA of the larger story, but also the quality of the storytelling? And Disney did such a great job with The Mandalorian.
Oh yes,
just unbelievable.
Right, and the trick in the movie, like storytelling, right, is when they're all connected like this, is to have each one feel like its own standalone movie, and at the same time it's connected to a bigger universe, but you don't feel like it's just another sequel, right? Because outside of the Dark Knight Batman's, right, like every trilogy, the worst one is the middle movie.
Well, and it's funny because I'm a big Ted Lasso and Yellowstone fan, right? And like,
just recently a Ted Lasso fan. I've been telling you to watch it for 2 years.
Yeah, I know. because I just got free Apple Plus for like 2-3 months.
Nice.
But in all those stories, and you're watching it and you're wondering, like, where's the story going?
Yeah.
Like, is it like in the cast of Yellowstone, they don't even know where it's going.
Yeah.
They just say, well, we think we're in season 5. Right? Like I feel pretty secure, but on that show, you never know.
Yeah.
And
the beauty of like the Ted Lasso is that Jason Sudeikis wrote it from the beginning to be a 3 season arc. That from the very beginning.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so there's some weird episodes that you're like, how did these make sense? It's because they wiggled him in. So do you remember the beard episode in season 2? It's so weird, and was like, this doesn't like carry the story at all. It's because Apple wanted 12 episodes instead of the 10. So he wrote 3 seasons. Each season had 10 episodes in it. Really? And Apple was like, we actually want 12. So in season 2, they added the Christmas episode, which was very cute and
but
pushed
didn't do anything.
Yeah, and then the beard episode. So that's those are the out of whack episodes.
And those writers wrote Marvel's season 4, right?
Oh, yeah, Phase 4, yes, probably. So
Phase 4.
Probably true.
They're like, get them out.
That's right. Let's just dream. Creatives. Hey, my name is Matt Manning, and I am the senior pastor here at Crossroads Church, and hopefully you are loving what you're listening to today. If you are, we would love for you to go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. You can leave us a comment. We read all of them. And if you like it, we'd love for you to share this with a friend. Every week we get together as a church to celebrate what God is doing, and you can join us every Sunday at 8:30, 10, and 11:30 online or in-house. Let's get back to the podcast. So Phase 4, so Marvel's built their whole thing on like phases and these transitionary periods. And really today on our podcast, we just wanted to talk about Phase 2 of our podcast.
Yes.
So we're entering into a new phase, and hopefully our next phase will be better than Marvel's last phase in this. But we are walking into this and actually making a lot of changes within the podcast. For the last year or so, we've been really doing like Pastors on Pop, and really the whole emphasis of this podcast has been to take like things that are going on in pop culture, like the multiverse saga, and talk about them because I love pop culture. I'm bringing you along in pop culture, and then spiritually, what does that look like for us? But through conversations and, I went on vacation. So when I came back, I have like a bazillion ideas. And this was one of the bazillions, is to go, what if we actually transition the podcast and really start to focus our podcast on Christianity for the curious, the confused, and the cautious?
Yeah, I love it.
And as we started talking about there was some real synergy in going, what if we, Phase 1 was a good phase with, Pastors on Pop, but really enter into this next phase where we look at Christianity and really focus it for those who are curious, where you open up the Bible and all of a sudden you're like, man, I am so confused about what's going on. Or for those out there who are like, man, Christianity, like there is a lot going on, and I'm not against you, but I am cautiously watching from the background what that looks like.
Well, and what I really love about it too is the title sounds like it's for people who are curious about Christianity,
Mm-hmm.
like on the outside looking in. But our excitement in the conversations that we're setting up is that um, it's for real life, and
Mm-hmm.
where practical real life intersect faith
Yeah.
and truth. And I mean, even as pastors, I mean, we're confused, we're cautious, like we are wading into following God, as men, as parents, as husbands, right? Like, and we're making it up as we go too,
Right.
as He gives us wisdom along the way. So our podcast is going to open up that. So the conversations are going to be applicable and have pastoral perspectives, but also one of the exciting things, and you can elaborate on it, is us bringing in a third person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to actually change the whole set here, and we're going to move into what we're calling the man cave, and we're going to bring a third person in just to add to the conversation of what does it look like, what are some of the questions that you've had about the faith. And like you said, our hope is actually to approach this in such a way that if you are a believer, if you're a church person, that you can listen to this in such a way that maybe we'll answer some of the questions that you've always had about the faith, or maybe that you've not been able to articulate. And in turn, that as you're living your life with your friends, your family, and your neighbors, that this can actually be a tool for you to help people in your life who are maybe seeking God but not quite there yet. How can you this would be a tool for you to use in their life, and so we want to bring in as the third person, the third part, our third wheel. Maybe that's what we'll call them.
Our third wheel. I
Yes,
like
our
that.
third wheel. Just people who are not pastors per se, but people who are part of our congregation, friends that we have, to come in and to interact with a part of the conversation. And so, James, when you think of the curious out there, and as we make this turn in the podcast to speak to those who are curious, what are some of the things that come to mind for you?
As far as topics,
Yeah,
that's a really good one. I think generally speaking, a spirituality and what that practically looks like is probably the biggest category, right? Because all of us understand physical health, and here in Colorado, we love it. Relational health,
yeah,
and I think people understand. Even people who don't believe in God,
yeah,
they understand humanity as there's a spiritual, there's kind of a secret sauce in there somehow.
yeah,
But a lot of people just don't understand how it works.
absolutely.
And when they think of Christians and they think of church, they think of institutions.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love about Crossroads is that ain't us.
Right.
I mean, we're pretty common people. We're theologians, like we're trained, but we're real people. Which so I think us bringing a spiritual perspective, or some of the mega themes of the heart of God, what it means to follow Him, and us actually putting those into various subjects that come our way, and kind of create a matrix to think as men and as women, but also as spiritual beings.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of the things that we've talked about is looking at parts of the scripture and going, what does this look like to live out in our real lives, and to have honest conversation about that. I'm really excited for it. Kind of the second part is for really the confused. And there's people in the church who are confused. There's people outside of the church that are confused. And so we've really sat down and thought about that and said, what would it look like to just take apart some of the things that we see in the Bible all of the time. And so one of the things that you and I have talked about is there's some pretty big words in the Bible that most people don't understand what it means. So you take just the occasion words, that's what I call them, the justification, sanctification, glorification. We see those particularly in the book of Romans, all three of them together. And I would venture to guess that most people, when we use those words, maybe they could define justification. Sanctification is a little bit harder for us to understand. Glorification, we want it now in terms of what our understanding is, but what does that actually look like? Because that is like the life of a believer.
Yes.
And it's so important. And so maybe you're confused about biblical words, or when we talk about the gospel, what the gospel is. And so we want to address that.
Well, and do it in a way to where we don't just create weird people that use weird words.
Yeah.
But rather we talk about it, we dialogue in such a way that we empower our listeners to be able to have a beer with a buddy.
Yeah.
And actually like share nuggets of what they heard us talk about. So instead of kind of like the bad culture of, you need to come to my church and have my pastor talk to you.
Yes.
It's like, you don't need Matt. You need to go sit in so-and-so's backyard.
Yeah.
And we actually equip them for those conversations by us kind of modeling it and kind of sharing some of our insights, and then kind of letting them go do the fun part of ministry.
Yeah.
And that's engaging with people.
Yeah, and our hope again is that this would even become a tool, right? So it's like,
Absolutely.
man, I'm maybe still struggling in my understanding of what justification is, but you're asking the salvation questions, and so hey, why don't you listen to this podcast?
Yeah.
And then let's have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
And what are our thoughts? And if we have more, then in that. And so that will be kind of the confused part. And then the third kind of category is the cautious. One of the things that I guess fits also into the confused is that we get a ton of questions all the time as pastors that people are looking for answers for. We have on most all of our blogs a little button that says Ask a Pastor, and people from all over the world submit questions to us, and they are hard questions. At times they're heartbreaking questions. One of the ones that just recently came in was about prayer, and this young guy was speaking about how he was a man of faith. And he prayed and he prayed and he prayed, and he never felt like God ever answered his prayers. And so he just decided that he could not worship a God who did not listen, who did not answer his prayers. That was his feelings in that. And then he went on this whole dialogue of you could see the internal wrestling, that he still wants to believe in God, but he's taking the posture of an atheist because of this prayer thing. And yet there's something in him, cautiously, that goes, maybe this church has an answer. Like, what does this look like? And so we want to take real world questions that people are submitting, that our listeners submit, and from time to time answer those questions.
That's so good. And people, in my experience, are afraid to be vulnerable and ask those questions.
Yeah.
So when I was a youth pastor years ago, and every 5 or 6 weeks, I have a box that said the question I've always wondered but was afraid to ask. And I usually used it when like I wanted like to not do like a biblical teaching, but kind of unpack a subject. And students, man, they threw questions in that box, and it did two things. One, it allowed me to know where they were really at with their faith. Yeah, because some of them. Things like, so if there's a guy in Africa, a missionary never visits him, and he dies, he goes to hell, because that ain't cool. Yeah, that ain't fair. Right. And it's like, let's talk about that. Yeah. But for a lot of people, if you don't have the platform to ask those questions, you get stuck there. And maybe you'll always wrestle with it, but if you have some sort of perspective, I mean, even the sovereignty of God, like in God's goodness, He will provide a way. Yeah. And for some people, that's all they need to be able to progress and get beyond that. Yeah. So having a platform for vulnerability, and us being able to shoot straight and be as Joe Rogan as we need to be to talk in our modern language about the heart of men and women.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we're really excited for this new season, this new phase 2 of the podcast, and where we're heading and what we're doing. If you are a subscriber to our podcast, you don't have to do anything. We're changing the title and the name and the look, but the RSS feed will still be the same. We'll still be on YouTube. You can find us there when we launch, and we're excited for that. And so, our podcast isn't huge. There's a couple hundred people that listen to this, and so we wanted to let you know where we're going and how we're getting there for your listening enjoyment. So, any final words as we close up Pastors on Pop?
I'm pumped. Enjoy your summer.
All right. Yes. We'll see you in a couple months.